You plan, you save, you put your money somewhere safe so that one day you don't have to worry. And then, on a quiet December morning, an email or a phone call arrives, and decades of careful planning are erased. While families sat in stunned silence in their homes, trading floors and television networks erupted. The global financial system scrambled to make sense of a collapse that completely defied logic. The people who lost their life savings in this crash were not high-stakes speculators chasing a quick fortune. They were cautious. They sought security. They handed over their children's college funds and their own conservative retirement nest eggs, fully believing they had placed their futures in the safest possible hands. The man holding those funds, Bernie Madoff, looked nothing like a criminal. He wore the quiet, unassuming authority of an elder statesman. His entire public persona projected steady, unwavering reliability to everyone he met. This was a trap designed specifically for people who did everything right. It worked because they weren't looking for a gamble. They were looking for the one thing every responsible investor craves: absolute certainty. In the 1960s, the New York Stock Exchange was a fortress of established wealth and closed doors. The major firms on the floor had absolutely no interest in a 22-year-old kid from Queens trying to trade penny stocks, so Madoff bypassed them entirely. He took the odd, small-volume trades the major players ignored. To process them efficiently, he moved away from paper slips and began building early electronic trading networks. The computer technology his firm helped develop worked so efficiently that it evolved into an entirely new stock market, the Nasdaq. This diagram shows how the flow of money shifted. While traditional exchanges relied on people shouting across a trading floor, Madoff's digital systems began processing a massive percentage of the country's daily stock transactions in fractions of a second. By the early 1990s, the outsider from Queens was sitting at the head of the table. He served 3 terms as the chairman of the Nasdaq, directly writing the rules of modern finance. His firm maintained a physical and structural footprint in the exact center of the American financial ecosystem. The authority he projected was built on historical innovation that modernized how the world trades stocks. When a pioneer of that magnitude offered to manage your money, you did not question his expertise. Madoff housed his operations inside a family business. His brother Peter ran compliance, his sons Mark and Andrew commanded the trading floor, and his niece Shayna worked as an attorney for the firm. In an industry known for faceless corporations and ruthless turnover, a firm operated entirely by a single family projected a sense of old-world integrity. It looked like a safe harbor. With his Wall Street credentials secured, Madoff carried his influence south. He embedded himself in the wealthy enclaves and private country clubs of Palm Beach, Florida. He never pitched his investment fund. If someone asked him to manage their money, he would frequently say his firm was closed. He made wealthy individuals wait for months, forcing them to prove they were worthy of giving him their cash. Rejection breeds desire. By turning people away, he manufactured an aura of extreme exclusivity. The clients he did accept felt so privileged that they actively recruited their own friends. At the same time, Madoff sat on the boards of prestigious charities and industry regulatory committees. A glance at his resume erased any hesitation a prospective investor might hold. He constructed an environment where standard financial due diligence felt insulting. People bypassed their usual checks. They trusted him because the most respected people in their social circles trusted him. This chart highlights the gap between market reality and Madoff's reported returns. While broader markets suffered chaotic crashes, his performance remained a straight line upward. Dodging every economic downturn without a single losing month is a mathematical impossibility. The man who helped build electronic trading also refused to bring his own investment fund into the digital age. Clients could not log in to check their balances online. They received their statements only through the mail. An operation holding tens of billions of dollars in global assets was functioning entirely on thick stacks of delayed paper records. When analysts looked for the massive auditing team required to verify those billions, they found a tiny 3-person accounting office in a suburban strip mall. The major derivative firms on Wall Street quietly noticed the math did not add up. Because his massive trading volumes couldn't be verified in the open market, many major banks simply refused to do business with his asset management wing. Financial experts repeatedly sent detailed whistleblower reports to federal regulators, pointing out the glaring mathematical errors. But government investigators, familiar with Madoff's immense stature, conducted superficial inquiries and walked away. Analysts who tried to reverse engineer his trading strategies kept hitting dead ends. The required options volume simply did not exist in the market. Behind closed doors, the affable elder statesman was changing. As the broader economy weakened and clients asked for their cash, his confident warmth gave way to a strained, frantic urgency. Decades of reputation had created a shield that the math, the warnings, and the tiny accounting office couldn't pierce. But as the global economy began to turn, those unanswered questions were no longer just anomalies. They were the first signs of a total collapse. The 2008 financial crisis swept across the globe, a relentless wave tearing apart the fabric of the modern economy. Panic set in instantly. Banks collapsed under their own weight, and ordinary people scrambled to pull cash out of institutions they had trusted for decades. That fear flooded the stock market. The S&P 500 plummeted, triggering a wave of redemption requests as investors desperately tried to liquidate their portfolios and hoard whatever cash they had left. While the world mourned the evaporation of legitimate wealth, the market's collapse was about to force a massive, hidden insolvency into the light. Bernard L. Madoff Investment Securities, LLC, was led by a former NASDAQ chairman and respected philanthropist. On paper, the firm managed $65 billion in client assets. Incoming redemption requests formed a massive, rapidly rising red bar, dwarfing the tiny green bar of actual cash on hand. Because the terrified global market caused fresh capital to dry up entirely, Madoff could no longer pay off lean clients. The 2008 financial crisis acted as a mathematical stress test, proving the business was already entirely insolvent long before the market began to drop. On December 10, 2008, the illusion finally cracked. Madoff gathered his two sons, Mark and Andrew, and suggested paying out $170 million in early bonuses, a bizarre move for a firm supposedly experiencing a severe liquidity crunch. When they pressed him on how the firm could afford bonuses but not client redemptions, he confessed. He told them he was finished, that he had absolutely nothing left, and that his entire investment fund was a giant Ponzi scheme. He asked his sons for 24 hours to get his affairs in order. They refused. Acting on the advice of their lawyers, Mark and Andrew walked out of the apartment and immediately reported their father to federal authorities. The next morning, the FBI arrived at Madoff's store. He surrendered without a fight. When agents asked if there was a reasonable explanation for the missing billions, he quietly replied that there was no innocent explanation. The largest financial fraud in history was brought down by the perpetrator's own flesh and blood, right at the moment the math made the lie physically impossible to sustain. Federal regulators missed the rot entirely. The Securities and Exchange Commission had conducted multiple investigations into Madoff's business practices over the years, failing to uncover the fraud happening right under their noses. He exploited a specific vulnerability, the 5% payout rule. Federal law requires charities to pay out exactly 5% of their funds each year. Madoff only had to fabricate this 5% return, knowing the massive principal would sit untouched, shielding his empty vault. The paperwork maintained the illusion. His victims received account statements filled with fake trades and shady accounting, collectively reporting $47 billion in phantom profits that did not exist. He weaponized the predictable mathematical behavior of these charities, along with the blind trust of his own community, using their institutional rules as a shield to systematically drain their endowments. In March 2009, Madoff stood in federal court and pleaded guilty to 11 felonies. The former Wall Street statesman officially admitted to operating a massive Ponzi scheme. The victim impact statements laid bare the scope of the devastation. Retirees had lost their entire life savings, and major philanthropies like the Pecauer Foundation were forced to close their doors. The judge offered no leniency. He ordered Madoff to forfeit $170 billion in assets and sentenced him to the absolute maximum allowed by law, 150 years in federal prison. The justice system successfully removed the man from society. But locking him away offered no real triumph. It could not magically restore decades of stolen life savings, or resurrect the charities that had been utterly hollowed out. The collateral damage extended into his own home. On December 11, 2010, exactly 2 years after Madoff's arrest, his eldest son, Mark, was found dead in his apartment by suicide. His other son, Andrew, died of cancer a few years later. His wife, Ruth, agreed to surrender nearly all of her assets to the victims' fund, living out her days isolated from the world she once knew. Madoff sat on the boards of major universities and charities, using his status as a community leader to recruit investors. To those victims, his visible success in charitable work served as a guarantee of his integrity. He turned every professional and personal relationship into a raw asset for his scheme, liquidating the very concept of good faith required for the financial system to function.